Welcome to Trends with Benefits, an award-winning podcast by Van Eck with a forward-looking perspective. We explore new ways of thinking about the markets, work, and life. Here's your host, Ed Lopez.
How was your trip back from Orlando?
It was wonderfully uneventful, as opposed to the 5.5 hours that it took to actually, sitting on a plane getting to Orlando. I actually had a whole whopping 2.5 hours on the way back.
Oh.
So it was great. I landed early, half an hour early. I got home early. It was great. Got to work out. It was wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a much better experience this time around. I mean, you do a lot of traveling, I know, but are you one of those that are buying those Apple Air tags to put in your luggage so you can track it?
Yes. It's funny you mentioned that. Yes, I am.
Yeah, I have a friend that runs a luxury travel agency out of Chicago, and we're planning a big trip to Egypt, and he was telling me to buy some of those things, or he was telling me the benefits of them, like he's been able to track his luggage because they go all over the world, and there have been numerous instances where they've had to track down and call the airline, and there's been instances where the airline tells them, well, no, it's right here in this airport. And he goes, well, no, it's not in London. It's still in JFK,
I mean, for me, it's for the most part, I've been lucky. I haven't had any luggage that was actually lost. It was just delayed in, getting to me. And also, it was also my return flight, right? So I was already home. And, so it wasn't, a horrific bother, but it's still travel chaos, and it's definitely gotten worse.
I haven't checked a bag in years. I'm always doing a carry-on.
How many days can you go on a carry-on? I can do 10.
I've done 2 weeks. I've done 2 weeks traveling in Thailand and Hong Kong, and and even safari. Actually, I went on safari in 2019. I guess it was about 2 weeks. Camera gear in one backpack and my carry-on and the other. Well, that's not true. We did. I take that back. We did check some luggage because we needed some extra gear. So anyway, yes, I can do 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's about, making sure that, of course, it's summer kind of weather, summer clothing. And as long as you can go ahead and, wash some items out and everything like that, you're good to go.
So welcome, everybody. I am Ed Lopez, and I'm speaking with Laila Kollmorgen. She is Managing Director and Portfolio Manager at PineBridge Investments. And she's responsible for managing the investments in collateralized loan obligations, CLO, tranches issued by third-party managers. We'll be talking about CLOs, as well as other things, like we've just been talking about travel issues. I am really excited to have her. It's no secret, I should say, or no accident that she's on the show. PineBridge and Van Eck have recently launched a strategy together in which Laila is the portfolio manager. And I think it's an exciting time for this particular asset class, CLOs. And we're going to delve into it, try to dispel some myths, and try to educate regular investors as well. So, Laila, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Maybe we can kind of tee this up, and then we can dig into the details as we go. But for our time-challenged listeners, maybe we can just kind of give a lay of the land, and maybe we can entice them to listen a little bit longer. The CLO market, I think, is traditionally an institutional market. More recently, through the advent of the ETF wrappers, become available to individual investors and their advisors. And it's grown, from about 400 billion, maybe under 400 billion in 2013 to over a trillion today. There's a tie, right, to the bank loan market. There's some similarities, and I think the reason why I mention that is because many advisors and their clients perhaps know bank loans. And I say this because just looking at the ETF market, there's $16 billion in bank loan ETFs. I kind of wanted to get your sense, just kind of broadly, what that tie is to CLOs, and perhaps kind of given that perspective that advisors have, why they might want to consider looking at CLOs for their portfolios.
Okay. I'm going to do a little bit of a step back. So, you have to kind of go back in history. So bank loans, it literally starts with the name. Why are they called bank loans? It's because these used to be the sub-investment grade loans that investment banks or banks made. That's why they're called bank loans. And they used to start out that, it was name your bank. We won't name any banks, but say a very large bank. And they made a loan to a corporate borrower. So rather than keeping that entire risk on their balance sheet, they called up a couple of other investment banks and they syndicated it out. It became a club loan. So again, still very much amongst all of the banks. And then they realized that there were investors that actually had demand for this type of investment. So the banks started actually syndicating and selling this debt. So several banks had it on their balance sheet. And then it became open to, again, institutional investors who then invested in it because it's just simply the size. The sizes here are extraordinarily large. So that's how it started. And that's why it's known as the bank loan market. More correctly, post the GFC, it's more apt to call it the leveraged loan market. Because of increases to regulation, banks no longer actually have some investment grade loans on their balance sheet. They actually syndicate it all out because of the onerous capital charges that a bank would incur if they actually held the bank loan on their balance sheet. So no longer do they hold those on the balance sheet. They adhere to leveraged loan lending guidelines, which are imposed by the SEC. And they syndicate this out to institutional investors. Now, to your point, this was a market which was closed off to retail investors and has only become available through an ETF. So very similarly, CLOs started, again, as private placements. It started, from those investors who started investing into bank loans. So that's how it started. So when you actually move, again, from bank loans. And again, these were institutional investors, and they took a look at the securitization market. And what they realized they could do is use the same type of technology that is used to create an asset-backed security or a mortgage-backed security. They utilized it and applied it to their leveraged loan portfolios. When they did that, they created a collateralized loan obligation. And collateralized loan obligations benefited because they had approximately 60% of the issue is rated AAA. Now, that was very attractive, again, to other institutional investors. Interestingly enough, it was very attractive to banks, bank treasury departments very specifically. So banks around the world took a look and said, that is a good investment. We're going to invest into the AAAs. We also saw insurance companies take a look and say, wow, okay, we think this is a good investment, and also began investing in AAAs, AAs, mainly in the investment grade portion of the cap stack. So again, this went from an institutional market to another institutional market. To this day, approximately 60% of leveraged loans is in a CLO. And as a result, this is where you're actually looking at the development of the market. It is still, for the most part, it is institutional investors who are investing into leveraged loans. Those leveraged loans, in turn, are purchased by CLOs. And CLOs themselves have historically been an institutional market for the aforementioned reasons. What's exciting for us is this ETF allows retail investors an opportunity to participate and invest in what was and has historically been an institutional market.
And just broadly, if you compare and contrast the characteristics for an investor investing in bank loans versus perhaps going the CLO route, I mean, it almost seems like you're kind of doing the same things. Like, why not just go directly to bank loans as opposed to a CLO? It seems like just another layer. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can look at is that you have, if you're investing in bank loans, you have one portfolio, maybe you've got 150, 250, 350 or so different and unique individual borrowers. When you're investing in a CLO, it's anywhere between 250 to, say, 450 individual borrowers. And if you own more than one CLO, for example, as we have done with the ETF, that means that you're investing in 25 unique different investments. So it's between 20 25 unique investments, what we have done currently. But what we're looking at doing is as the ETF grows, we'll be growing the number of investments, increasing the level of diversity. So rather than having exposure to a portfolio of, say, 250 unique borrowers, we're in fact giving you an opportunity to invest in a much more diverse investor pool and be able to have a greater level of diversity in that portfolio. So it's through the individual investments and each of the unique different CLOs that you'd be investing in.
Yeah, so if somebody was to think about it, and somebody talked about this the other day that I thought it was great, which was if you look at some of these bank loan funds out there, they're kind of like a single CLO, right? It's like it's one CLO investing in a bunch of bank loans. Now, if you're in a CLO fund, for instance, you have multiple strategies like that within one fund.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I take a look at a bank loan portfolio, your risk as an investor is, and defaults happen. Just they do, even with the best credit selection possible. So you're still taking a look at defaults in your portfolio. As an investor directly into a bank loan portfolio, you're going to be realizing, those losses. You may take a look and say right now, a yield currently on a leveraged loan portfolio is going to be about 8%. And that looks pretty attractive. You could say, well, depending on the level of where we believe defaults are going to get, even on a loss given basis, maybe my default, my return somewhere is going to be in the high 7%. So let's just say something along those lines, barring something really tragic happening. So that's one way you can take a look at it. The way that we like to look at CLOs is that you can take, it's that same portfolio, but the way that securitization works is that you have built-in levels of subordination. Those levels of subordination act to protect you. The way that, in the tranches that we're looking at investing in the ETF, again, it's principally investment-grade tranches with some exposure to double Bs, which are below investment grade. But the way that we're actually looking at it is that you've got a certain level of subordination. And I think that's going to be, let's call it, 10 to 13% subordination, even below the double Bs, and about 15% subordination, below the triple Bs. So when we're looking at the level of protection you have, it really is quite robust.
What if we could break that down a little bit more and kind of explain that, how you take the bank loan market, which I think is generally considered high yield, and then turn that into various bonds of various credit qualities, including AAA or AA, down into the equity portion as well.
Yeah, it comes back down to securitization, and this is the same thing you're doing with an auto ABS is auto loans. Those are not even necessarily great borrowers per se. Same thing when you're taking a look at a mortgage-backed security. You may have great borrowers, you may have not so great borrowers. It kind of depends on your borrower pool. In those securitizations, you don't necessarily know the credit quality. You don't know where these loans are made to. You don't know really anything. You got some ideas, maybe FICO scores, maybe geographic ideas as to where that house or auto loan may be. In contrast, a CLO is significantly different. We have very specific borrowers. We can identify every single one of them, and we're looking at each of these individual credits. In a securitization, you still have the ability to create a AAA, a AA, a single A, a triple B. And that's what's done in all securitizations. The same type of technology is being applied to the leveraged loan market. 2/3 of the leveraged loan market are rated single B. So how is it you create, a AAA from, a portfolio that's going to be double B and single B rated? Well, it is through that art of securitization. AAAs for the most part have approximately 40% subordination. That's a lot. You can't break. It's very difficult to break, a AAA CLO. And in fact, in the almost 30 years, of rating data that we have from Moody's, no AAA nor AA CLO has ever defaulted or had any losses. In fact, we can go down to the single A. There's been no losses there either. And the amount of defaults and losses that we've seen at the triple B or even double B level are really de minimis. And certainly when we compare that with other comparatively rated corporate debt. So it's very interesting because in the 30 years of data that we have through every single market cycle, you can talk about rate hikes, recessions, dot-com bust, bubbles, the GFC. Through all of these different types of market crises, what we've actually observed is that CLOs have participated and done very, very well, such that you have had no losses, again, at the AAA, the AA, or the single A level.
And so that securitization, well, I should say, and perhaps that credit rating that these bonds get, that these CLO bonds get, does that really come from just the idea that there's mass diversification? There's many, many loans as opposed just to a few that might be double B rated or something, and therefore because of that they can get a higher rating. Is that right?
It is. The CLOs are actually actively managed. You have a manager. You have a group of people that are making decisions as to which leverage loans they're going to be investing in. A CLO is also highly documented. It has an investment document, it has investment guidelines. It also has performance and quality tests. So what this does is that it says there can only be so many positions that are going to be 1% of the portfolio. Everything else has to be significantly smaller. There are also requirements as to a minimum level of diversity. So literally it states it has to be a diverse portfolio. In addition, you have maximum industry concentration limits. So there are very stringent guidelines that the portfolio manager has to use when they are actually constructing the portfolio and also as they're actively managing it. Most reinvestment periods tend to be between 3 and 5 years, and there is typically a 1 or 2 year non-call period. So these are actively managed. What we like about this is that, as we mentioned, there will be defaults in the leveraged loan market. It happens, but a manager is able to sell out of the credit. They can also, in their own work and their credit analyses, if they believe that a company is not going to do so well or a sector is going to severely underperform due to changes in regulation, changes in market conditions, they can sell out of those exposures. This also mitigates losses. And what it does is that it highlights that active management is a very important risk management tool and one that we really appreciate.
And some of those regulations that you detailed there, those are kind of a result of an evolution of this market, are they not? It didn't all start out with all of these particular constraints.
No, it didn't. And I think as time goes on, what you have found, in the documentation, it's developed because of requirements from banks, interestingly enough, or insurance companies, and they said, well, okay. We would like to see, a very diverse portfolio. We would like to see certain industry concentration limits. We want to see, position portfolio limits. So we have all of these different requirements. We have documentation that are termed debt-friendly and those that are termed equity-friendly. The equity tranche is the non-rated tranche that's at the bottom. It is the tranche that gets all of the defaults and losses as they occur. So as an investor in the equity tranche, on one hand, you would like to have a portfolio that is earning a lot, that's going to distribute a lot out to you after it pays off interest on the liabilities. On the other hand, a more, let's call it, higher yielding portfolio could be deemed as being riskier. So the debt tranches want less of that. So there is a constant dialogue between the debt and the equity, and then that it eventually they come to an agreement and the documentation is produced for that particular deal. So when we're saying that there's documentation, there is no one standard document, believe it or not, in the CLO market. Every single transaction has a different document, and there are differences between the documents, even for the same manager. Because of the different investors in a transaction. So it does mean that CLOs are idiosyncratic.
Yeah, so I guess each one is kind of different depending on what the market is demanding at that point or what the investors are demanding at that point.
At any one time.
Yeah.
Any one time.
Yes, I wonder if we can break down the yields a little bit. As you mentioned, the potential for higher yields relative to, say, bank loans or other corporate bonds. How does that happen? Is it in the structuring process where the yields from a pool of bank loans just get portioned out differently? Or is there other leverage being employed? Or is it simply just the fact that liquidity in the market or access to the market is harder and therefore they can demand, investors can demand a higher yield? Am I asking the right questions?
Yeah, it starts first off with the bank loans themselves. So the bank loans themselves, it is a below investment grade product. It, generally has some sort of collateral or other sort of protection and documentation. Recovery rates in the leveraged loan market have historically been between 60 and 70%. So that's a very important recovery rate number to take a look at. We do have instances when recovery rates are lower, and we certainly take those into account when we're looking at investments. But again, taking a look at that in a recovery rate of 60 to 70% is much higher than taking a look at unsecured high yield. That can be anywhere between 25 and 40%. So when you're taking a look at the recovery rates between the two asset classes, that's very important to consider. 60 to 70% or 25 to 40%, when you have a default, that means your loss is obviously going to be less with a higher recovery rate. So we have to start with that kind of bank loan recovery rate there. That said, it is still below investment grade, which does mean it's going to have a comparable yield, let's say, to high yield, oftentimes less, sometimes more, depending on how the market is perceiving risk. So the demand for leveraged loans, where the market is pricing risk, so that's market driven, is going to determine the yield on the underlying bank loan. In order to create a CLO, we have to also take into account market conditions and market demand. So it depends on where you actually are able to place the AAA in the primary market. And again, that's market driven. That has everything to do with investor sentiment regarding CLOs, but also just kind of market conditions. So for us, investors in AAA CLOs also consider investments into corporate IG. Actually, that is another comparison. So for us, whatever's happening in the investment grade market is, in fact, our investors are saying, well, I can earn, IG right now has an option adjusted spread, of 150 basis points. They're going to take a look at our AAAs and say, well, we would like to earn 165. And so that's how it happens. You'll occasionally get some, divergences between markets. We also have AAA CMBS investors, commercial mortgage-backed security investors. And so again, that's very comparable. So if we have any kind of spread widening that's happening in investment-grade corporate bonds, we're going to see similar type of widening in AAA CLOs. So that's also market-driven. So all of this in credit is somehow tied, as it should be. If sentiment in credit, is more positive, we have spreads tighten and yields go down. And again, if it's more negative, it widen. So a CLO is only created if there is appropriate market demand for, CLOs, the AAA, and if it makes sense in the creation. So there's some math involved in it, but a CLO is not created if the math doesn't work. So it has to work as long as all the yield conditions are in place.
What about demand for the underlying leveraged loans or senior loans? Hasn't that more recently tapered off? And is that a concern for CLO investors?
It's not a concern for CLO investors per se. It has to do, again, with market perceptions. There has definitely been concerns that the United States, that the economy is weakening, that we're going to have a slowdown in the economy, and we'll have an uptick in defaults. So where are we right now with regards to defaults? Here in the United States, defaults are, I think, approximately 0.4%, so 40 basis points. That's very, very low in leveraged loans. So we are coming off of a very, very low level, very benign credit conditions. So when we're looking at defaults, the question is not where are we now, but where could we get to? And that's where the leveraged loan market is still kind of figuring this out. In the United States, we're currently seeing still fairly strong economic conditions, but we do have a central bank, the Fed, which is looking at increasing interest rates in order to fight inflation. How this is actually going to translate into defaults is still a little bit of an unknown, but you can certainly assume quite safely that there will be some. The question is, when will we start to see defaults flow through, and when, what level are they anticipated to get to? Is it going to be 2.5% or 3%? Well, if that's the case, the historical average for leveraged loans is approximately 3% per annum. So we are significantly below the historical averages for defaults, and what we're looking at getting to, certainly in the next year or so, is back to historical averages. So right now, we don't see a significant level of concern, but there is a lot of uncertainty right now in the market. Could the path of interest rates that the Fed is taking us get to a level where it would really impact the economy in a negative fashion and really increase default levels? And that's currently what's being priced into the market. As a result, leveraged loans are finding a clearing level. It's always a discussion between the investment banks, the company, and investors. And investors right now are demanding a higher yield. So it's not that you can't clear the leveraged loan. It's just not clearing at the level the investment bank or the company would like to place the debt.
And speaking about rising interest rates, I guess one of the features of CLOs, I think much like bank loans, is that they have floating rate coupons, correct? So they should benefit generally from rising rates, I guess, until they hit whatever equilibrium. It's rising interest rates start to affect the economy and therefore the borrowers and their ability to pay back.
Yes, that's right. So there's another benefit to investing in the tranches and the debt versus the equity, because we're going to be obviously benefiting from the fact that as interest rates continue to increase, CLO tranche coupons are also going to be increasing. So that's a benefit, and we are definitely taking a look at that. So your current income, literally your current coupon, is going to be increasing as the Fed increases interest rates. Obviously, that can reverse and it can go back down, but you're still earning more than, let's call it an investment grade portfolio where the entire investment grade universe went to market, in 2020 and 2021, and you're stuck with coupons somewhere, around 1.25%. You're not going to find that in CLOs.
So to maybe put a bow on the yield discussion a little bit, and just from a portfolio perspective, one could take a high grade position that's perhaps in bank loans. Could you get a comparable yield with a CLO, but basically turn that into an investment grade?
Absolutely. So we talked about a bank loan portfolio. Let's say that it's yielding anywhere between, let's call it 6 to 8%. And right now, what is it that we're going to be taking a look at? We're going to bring down, obviously, the rating from a double B, single B type portfolio, and we're going to be, really moving that into an investment grade portfolio. So there is going to be a little bit of a trade-off. We are looking right now at AAAs yielding approximately 4.5%, and we're looking at triple Bs yielding about 8.25%. In this current market environment, because we're still positioning portfolios a little bit more conservatively and defensively, we're taking a look at constructing more of a portfolio that's going to be in the AAAs and the AAs. In that kind of a yield, we're going to be targeting somewhere around 5% or so. Now, as we take a look at the economy, as we take a look at markets, we will be shifting the portfolio down in credit, where we're going to be adding much more triple Bs, and we are going to be adding selectively double Bs. At that point, we're certainly going to be looking at having a portfolio that would be yielding more than a bank loan. But also, importantly, it's going to be where we actually purchase the securities, not just on a yield level. We're also going to be looking at the prices that we're purchasing the securities. So right now we're looking at purchasing, securities in the kind of 97, 98 for AAAs and kind of in the mid-90s for AAs. Where are we going to be looking at purchasing triple Bs and double Bs? That's certainly going to be, let's call it, in the $75 to $85 price, and that's quite attractive. So one of the things that we like to look at is not just the yield that you're considering right now, but also the positive convexity that we see with the underlying securities. So what do we mean by positive convexity? The positive convexity happens to be the price, that you're purchasing at. So let's take a price of 85. Well, the question is, when is it going to get to 100? And we believe that over certainly a kind of a 2-year time period, that probability or ability to get to 100 is actually pretty high. One of it has to do with the fact that a CLO's lifespan, we talked about an investment period of kind of 3 to 5 years. A lot of managers, we do have the ability in the CLO to, in fact, call a transaction, and they can call it for a variety of different reasons. Either they're going to call the transaction outright. Sometimes they actually want to reissue a transaction. So they'll change the terms again and reissue it as if it were new. They'll also do at times what's known as refinancing, which is just simply refinancing the coupons lower. So what this does is that it shortens the CLO life. Instead of it maybe being outstanding for about 7 years, oftentimes it's outstanding for about 3 or 4. So think about it. If you bought a security at 85 and you were thinking that you were going to get repaid in about 8 years, that's not as attractive as when you might think that you could get repaid in about 3 or 4. That's that positive convexity, that ability to get your money back, that par, sooner. And this is one aspect of the CLO market we really like, because we price it as if it were going to be redeemed in about 7 years. But in reality, the optionality that managers have in calling transactions really benefit us as investors because we're buying it at a price of 85. So this optionality is an aspect of CLOs that we like. It's this positive convexity, and it really does enhance the yield. So the yields that you see now are really what we call yield to worst. What if it really actually, lasted for another 7 years? But in reality, so often these transactions are called early, and we get a much, much higher yield because we're able to purchase at a price of 85.
For investors possibly considering an allocation to CLOs, where should they start to look in terms of where to put that in their portfolio? Do they replace a high yield strategy like bank loans, or do they complement or replace an investment grade portfolio or investment grade sleeve? How would you start to approach that?
The short answer is yes. Yes, without a doubt. The first step is very easy. You take a look at your investment grade portfolios, and there are other securitizations. Some people certainly also have that as well. Bringing CLOs in is one that's going to be looking at enhancing your yield. We have had many investors that were over the years that have come to us to have their first CLO investments, and they did this first because they thought, well, okay, the yields are very attractive. Let's just take a look. And, they have made it a permanent part of their allocations. And they look at it and they say, quite simply, it has a more attractive yield than investment grade corporate bonds. And so it is certainly a significant portion of their portfolio. The other is oftentimes is that it has a higher yield than an asset-backed security. So that's another element. It has less volatility, than what we see in CMBS or in non-residential mortgages. Those are the other aspect. When we're taking a look at why someone would take a look at adding CLOs. So we take a look at the securitization portfolios that they have, and also at the investment grade corporate portfolios. For our bank loan strategies, we also include CLOs and bank loans. Sometimes it's a supplement to a bank loan strategy. And the reason for that, again, is that you're able to move up in credit oftentimes and get that same type of yield. So that's the other element. Again, a bank loan portfolio is going to be double Bs, single Bs, and you can replicate that similar type of portfolio, say, with a single A or triple B with some double B exposure. One of the nice things about this particular ETF is that we are going to be investing into investment grade tranches with an ability to invest up to 20% into double Bs. What this means is that we're able to use the entire cap stack for risk management purposes, portfolio construction. So when we are more conservative and risk off, we're in the triple A's and double A's predominantly. And then when we take a look at adding risk, we move down the cap stack, adding that single A, triple B, and double B. So we think that benefit of being able to move up and down the cap stack is one that we are able to utilize much more effectively than trying to simply constantly allocate between, okay, we're going to go into treasuries, we're going to go into investment grade, or now we're going to add risk by going into bank loans. It's a lot of work, I think, for a lot of investors, to do that and constantly shifting around. By allowing us to do it and utilizing the CLO cap stack, we're able to do that for them. And hopefully we're able to deliver the types of returns they're seeking.
And what would you say to somebody asking why CLOs today?
Because the CLO market has grown. We started off with talking about how the CLO market has grown and developed, and we are now over $1 trillion outstanding worldwide. The United States is about $900 billion outstanding, and we've got about $200 billion or so in Europe. What you're actually looking at now is a market that has grown and developed such that it's now too big to ignore. That is one of the reasons as to why now. The other happens to be that you have the capacity through the development, sophistication in the market, and the growth of the market. It's one where we believe, an allocation to CLOs is going to be an enhancement to anybody's portfolio, and certainly we're excited to bring that to a retail portfolio.
Now, I know we're running a little long, but this wouldn't be my podcast if I didn't ask you something about Texas, because as you know, I'm from Texas and you're from Texas and you're living back there now, right?
That's right.
So I'll ask you one question. Let's see. What's your favorite Texas food. What would you introduce somebody to that has never come to Texas before?
Do I have to choose one?
No.
That's not fair. You can't do that. You can't just choose one. That's just not possible. Between barbecue and Tex-Mex, it's a really, really tough call.
Yeah. Top of mind for me right now, maybe that's because I'm hungry, but it'd be a weird time to eat it, would be migas.
For me, it's a tough one. Having spent almost 25 years, not living in Texas, I can tell you most places do not do Tex-Mex well. It's horrible. I've had some of the absolute worst food in my life that they would say was Tex-Mex. I was just like, no. For me, fajitas are still one of my favorites. It's a simple thing. Growing up in San Antonio, we had a Taco Cabana, the original one.
Those are awesome.
That was mine. That is still one of my absolute favorite, joys in life. Very simple, but that's definitely it.
That's awesome.
And on the barbecue side, it's brisket.
Oh, I agree. I love brisket. And I feel like that has become a super trend in Texas lately. I'll drive around Austin. I feel like I can smell it in the air, unlike, in past decades, but it's just like it's everywhere.
It is. And then that's a good thing. I don't see anything wrong with that food development at all.
Yeah. What's one long-term trend you see playing out over the next year or several years? It could be about CLOs or what we talked about or something else that you're just particularly interested in.
I think one of the longer-term trends would have to be, the continued growth of credit. And the reason I say this, the markets continue to grow, companies continue to need to borrow. So we're going to continue to see the growth of the leveraged loan market, high yield market, and CLOs in particular. CLOs is still, we've been talking about it being an institutional product. It is, but the number of institutions that are not in CLOs is actually quite high. The size, when I talked about the size of the CLO market now being over $1 trillion, that's actually the aspect of where it's gotten too large to ignore. That's the trend where we're definitely going to continue to see, growth, in the investor base of CLOs. And when you have a growth in CLOs, that's going to be a growth in the leveraged loan market, and will also be a growth in the high yield market. So we'll continue to see those three markets grow.
Fantastic. All right, so this is Trend or Fad as our next segment. I'll ask you about a few different topics and get your quick take, Trend or Fad.
All right.
Catastrophe bonds, cat bonds, Trend or Fad?
Trend.
Alternative protein, Trend or Fad?
Trend.
Interval funds, Trend or Fad?
Fad.
Psychedelics in medicine, Trend or Fad?
Trend. For many years, I've done things like acupuncture, and also done Chinese herbs. So I do believe that there are alternative ways of looking at things and treating things. So psychedelics is just another aspect of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Laila, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time and coming on and speaking with me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
What's the best way for people to learn more about you, PineBridge, and connect with you?
Obviously, there is the wonderful web pages that we have, whether it's VanEck or PineBridge's, and being able to take a look at the web pages. Certainly connecting, via LinkedIn. I think this podcast will certainly be able to do all of that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.